Hey, what's up, Liron here, and in today's video I'm going to teach you the secret to getting a realistic result in watercolor every single time. This is no myth, no legend. It's a process that actually works and will get you the realistic result you're after, or you desire, or you deserve. So this is exactly what my watercolor realism course is based on. I'm going to put a link in the description box below. Be sure to check it out if you want to get that realistic result every single time. If you want to learn how to treat shapes, values, edges, all of that good stuff, compile it together into a painting that feels realistic, feels three-dimensional. Check it out. Link in the description box below. And with that, let's get to the process. Now, what this is based off of is grabbing a reference photo and then turning it black and white in Photoshop, and then doing the posterize feature, which essentially reduces the number of values. Now, what this ends up looking like is just a gray, a black, and a white in this example, because it just shows 3 values, right? And you can see it in this process. So what you're going to see is, again, black shapes, gray shapes, and white. You can decide how many values you want to show. You can go for more values, but I love 3, and I love doing this with high contrast pictures like this one. I'm going to put links to the reference in the description box below, the edited version, the original version, so we can work off of that. Some of you may recognize this process. I painted this live, but now I cut out all the fluff. It's just the process. So what am I actually doing here? Once I have the photo in simplified values, black, gray, white, all I'm doing is filling in the shapes. And that's the key here. All you really need to do is fill in the shapes as consistently as you can with what you see in the reference photo, and to postpone or delay your disbelief that it's going to work. So look at what I'm doing here. I'm patient. I'm filling in that triangular rooftop. Beautiful, beautiful shape. I'm filling it in with that black paint. Now, when you do this, try and be as accurate as you can, right? Try and really fill in the shapes accurately. That's the more accurate you can be in the shapes too, the better the result is going to be, which is why I love these cityscapes with strong, sharp, triangular, square shapes, because it's much easier to paint than when you look at something organic very often, like person or fruit or still life, something like that. This gives you those clear, sharp shapes. All I'm doing is filling them in. Now, the fun part about this process is that you can pretty much jump between the different values. So right now, I'm working on the darkest darks, which is kind of against what you would traditionally do in watercolor. Shouldn't you work light to dark? Not necessarily. Let me show you exactly how this ends up working. So I'm filling in a bunch of dark shapes, and I'm trying to be as accurate as I can. Then what I'm going to do at some point is decide to start filling in the grays, right? The mid value. And I'm going to mix properly and make sure it's the right value. But what you're going to notice once this happens is that it recontextualizes the scene. What do I mean by that? I mean that suddenly you understand what the lights are and what the darks are. And this is one tip that I'll give you for any watercolor process you go through. Here I am using some test paper. Any watercolor process you go through, the number one thing, to me, in my opinion, any painting as well, is to, again, delay that feeling of gratification. It's not going to look right for a few moments. The context is off. Okay, look at how dark this looks when I painted a small shape. But what's going to happen, the more I open up the shape, you're going to see it's going to fall into the accurate mid value. But this is right now the gray. Okay, again, don't be mistaken by how dark it looks. Just give it a second and you'll see how light it becomes. Okay, there we go. That's the more true, accurate value. Now, as I paint this shape, suddenly this tells our brain anything that is other than that shape is white, and the black, it sort of sets the scale. So right now you only have the dark side of the scale, and then the medium side pops in, defining the high key side. Okay, so delay that worry, just focus on the shapes. Look at the shapes in front of you, fill them in. Sometimes this is hard, admittedly, but if you look here, it's really a clear shape. It's just all of that is gray. Now, this gray also connects to the sky. If you've been paying attention, you'll notice the sky is gray and it almost connects to the building. I'm separating them purely for my own convenience, because remember what I said, you can approach this any way you want. You can start with the dark value, then you can jump into the light value, then you can go back to dark, go back to light. That's the best part about this process. You're not bound necessarily to, I have to connect all of the washes together. I have to really worry about a huge wet and wet shape that has tons of details in it. This process almost entirely circumvents wet and wet. All you have to do is put the right value in the right place. And it kind of reminds me of painting with dry media, or not wet media, not watercolor. So if you were to paint in oils, you'd probably mix a lot, and then you'll apply the paint to paper in a small space, and then you'll mix the shape or area next to that, and you'll apply it. And of course, you can do wet and wet and kind of different styles and alla primas, but generally speaking, all you have to do here is really know that if you follow the process, it's going to end up working out. Look at the dark door there at the bottom, and I'm actually going to play around with my video because I don't see it probably. There we go. Look at that dark door in the bottom floor. I just skipped it because it's dark. You could paint over it. You could paint over everything and then bring the darks. But then I'm running the risk of being confused by what's the shape I'm going to paint next, which is why I didn't want to do that. It's as simple as that. You decide. No real rules. Just fill in the shapes. Here I go again, painting the darks where there are lights behind them that I'm going to add later on, but I'm just putting them in. Don't be romantically attached to a certain process. That's one thing I see a lot of people kind of forcing themselves to do with no good reason behind it. I'm used to covering the entire paper, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm used to merging all shapes together, so this is what I'm going to do. No, break that. In my opinion, the process should do one thing, and that is serve the end result that you're after. And if your process is able to serve that end result, you've done well. That's all there is to it. So work towards building your own process that works for you. Now, what I'm doing here is giving you a pre-made process. So don't follow what I say as well. Check it out, test it out, see how you feel about it. For this particular method, it works. Take the photo, turn it black and white, posterize it, decide how many values you want. Again, you can jump between two values, which is just the black and gray, and then the white is left. It's paper white. You can go 4, you can go more. You can go as many as you want. The more skilled you are, the better you'll be at matching the value. But keep it simple and just focus on matching the shape to the value you see there. And don't be afraid to go dark. People have this thing all the time. They're too scared to go dark. 90% of the paintings I see that you send me, they're just too light. I can take, in theory, 90% of the paintings you send me, work on them for like 5 minutes, and they'll look perfect. You didn't blow up the process, or you didn't mess it up. All you have to do is go darker usually. Okay? Now, if you went too dark, that's not the end of the world. Things are fixable. You can control the wash, especially if it's still wet. Okay? Now, look at this shape for the background. Look at how simple it is. All I'm thinking of is you can literally take a few steps back from the screen, squint your eyes at the reference photo, just see the abstract shape that is the buildings in the background, the maybe shadow cast by this front building, and you're good to go. Look at these windows and the way I'm putting them in. Super simple. It's just vertical lines. That's all there is to it. And if you look at the reference photo, you'll see they're just a bunch of vertical lines. Don't let reality fool you. That's all there is there. And the painting, like Alvaro Castanet says, it's an illusion. It's not real. It's just marks on paper. But these marks put together in a great way will work and will look awesome and will look realistic. So what we're doing with this type of process is we're hacking realism. We're able to achieve it simply by following the values. Look at the left side of the building. It's all in the shadow, right? Look at how adding this shadow puts in context the highlights and the darks. It immediately makes the darks look richer and the highlights look bright. Because so far, everything's a highlight, right? And if you look at the sky right now, the sky is light. It should be dark. As soon as I add that mid value, it's going to make all the highlights pop, okay? So postpone your need for gratification and it looking right. A lot of the painting process is patience, mentally. Here, be patient. You haven't messed it up. Just keep going. You'll get the right context. You'll get it to look right, okay? I want you to hear my words here because this is most of the issues that people run into. What I'm giving you here is a blueprint. Just follow the values and you will get a realistic result. Now, will it be the most creative realistic result? Will it be the prettiest? Will it be full color? No, all of these, the answer to that is no or not necessarily, right? But from here, from practicing this, from being able, look at this triangular roof in just one moment. It's going to look fantastic. From following this, from learning the skills of color, of value matching, of following the shapes you see and analyzing them correctly, this is immediately applicable to more complex processes. Don't be fooled. This is how you grow, by doing things that are manageable. You're able to match the value, you're able to match the shape, great. That's how you learn to do these things, not necessarily by doing fully finalized paintings, right? Fully finalized paintings are important. They're an important style building part. But the way you build the skills, and most of the people I talk to and I see their paintings need to work on the skills, not necessarily, when I say all you have to do is paint and it will come, that's when you're pretty much at a very good spot with the skills, and all you have to do is really just paint as much as possible. And at that point, honestly speaking, I don't have a lot to teach you, okay? But until you reach that point, that's how you do it. That's how you practice these skills. Now, this is all about the small details right now. See, I finished most of the big shapes. It looks great. It already looks realistic. I challenge you to take a few steps back away from the screen. It's going to look almost identical to the reference photo. I'm actually going to show you this in just a few seconds. But putting in, the more details you can put in, the more detailed it's going to get, the nicer it's going to get, the nicer are the finishing touches. But don't be misled by details. The actual real thing that pulls this together has already been done. It's the big major shapes. That's what brings this thing together. Now look at the ground. As soon as I put in that gray value, it's going to make the walls lighter. And this is my interpretation, because if you see the reference photo, the ground is just white. But I wanted to bring out some of those highlights on the buildings. And once you put in that mid value, you give them more power. Essentially, because value is relative, and that's one point I kind of want to leave you with. Because value is relative, color is relative too. Value is relative, so when you paint the darks, you essentially tell the viewer, this here is the lights, okay? All of the painting process is negative no matter what you do. Either in the shape, here's the shape I'm leaving behind, or in terms of values, because you tell the viewer, this is the dark. Oh, so this value that so far was the darkest is the mid value, actually, right? You can textualize and recontextualize. But I'm going to go back to the basics here, and I know I'm reiterating this, but it's really important. Go back to the basics. Here's a shape. I'm going to fill it in. Are you uncertain about a shape? That's okay. Skip that. Work on the next shape you feel confident about. The more details you have on paper, the easier it's going to be to add more. That's one thing I don't mention too much. So if you've stuck along here with me with the process so far to 11 or so minutes into the video, you're getting this gem, okay? So yeah, that's just all of these things come together. It's going to create a beautiful, beautiful result. At the start, you may be confused. You're like, what am I starting with here? Sometimes you'll find the darkest shape, like these triangular or square shapes of rooftops, are the easiest. So go with that. Again, the more details you have on paper, the easier it's going to be to add more details. And that's how you get started. And usually, my work order is based on that. It truly is. I think to myself, what's the next clearest thing I feel confident working on? Then I do that. I'm also confused when I get started with a painting. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I'm figuring it out along just like you do. Okay? So choose the next clear thing, work on that, slowly build it up. Here's the final result. Really, really like this. I'm going to share with you a better quality pic in just one moment, I believe. But it's a very simple process. 3 values. Here's the comparison with the reference photo. I think it turned out fantastic. Really like the end result. Don't be fooled by the details and the high level. And how do you think of a wash and what do you combine together? Set all of this aside. That's how you improve one specific skill, which is getting a realistic result. Again, is it your personal flair and your style? Not necessarily, but it will get you that realistic result. It will look great. It will look fantastic. And it will have the right values, the right shapes, and everything else accurate. So I encourage you and urge you to check out the Watercolor Realism course, link in the description box below. 2 links, follow the right one, whether you bought the frustration-free course before or not. It's going to help me with future communications with you. Thank you so much for watching. Keep painting. Don't give up. You can do this. Anyone can do this. And I will see you in the next vid real soon.